I mean,
you mentioned the cast too. Can we just address for some listeners might listen to this being like me a month ago, where I'd say I'm never going to watch Speed Racer, but I'm going to listen to this pod because I like.
Yeah, you're the best agent here to help.
Right. Yeah, but I'm going to listen to this pod anyway because it's the Movies, Films, and Flicks podcast. So you're listening to us talk about a movie that you haven't seen and you're not sold on it yet. This has Susan Sarandon, John Goodman, Emile Hirsch, I hope you know that actor, Matthew Fox, who a listener should know from Lost, if nothing else. He was the lead star of Lost. Like this has, and Christina Ricci. Good Lord.
That was perfect casting, I would say, because she just fits in that world perfectly.
Oh, for sure. And that hair that I swear would be horrible on anyone else. She managed to make that work.
Yeah. And you had Scott Porter from Friday Night Lights, which makes me happy.
I jumped on Mark for that cast introduction, though. I think Mark was onto some lightning in a bottle.
And it's also really inclusive. Like the movies the Wachowskis do, and whether people sort of acknowledge it or not. I mean, we have to remember this is a Hollywood movie, so maybe now in 2020 there is that bigger drive, right, to include more Chinese and Asian actors. But this was back in what year was it? 2007, I think.
Yeah, probably when they were making it, and then it came out in 2008.
Yeah, but even in like The Matrix and stuff like that, like they're always trying to be a bit more inclusive than your typical Hollywood blockbuster. So I appreciate it for that. I mean,
we had a lot of Australian accents.
Yeah.
And Rain, the South Korean star, and he's also in a movie called Ninja Assassin.
Oh, that was Rain?
Yep.
That was him?
Yeah, where they hide in these shadows. Do you think you could hide in the shadows, John?
I could hide. Okay, if Total Darkness counts as a really big shadow, this plus-size ninja is hidden.
What about you, Adam? You could get in the shadows.
I mean, I basically live in the shadows. In my studio, I don't even use many lights, so this is just my pathetic existence.
If we were non-jas coming to hunt you down, Mark, I would be in the total darkness, thus a shadow. Then you would turn on the light, you'd see me, you'd deal with me, but little did you know, Adam was in my shadow. Double ninja.
We're all just standing in the shadow of John.
In class, Adam would sit underneath the like in our classrooms. If there was ever a light out, he would sit underneath that. He was very sneaky in grad school. You never knew he was there.
I'm pale and sensitive to light.
Ghosts.
Right.
No, but also, I guess we were talking about this. This movie also has the benefit. We're talking about the colors, the design. It also had the benefit of having a $120 million budget in 2007. So, I mean, add some inflation, that's what, like 150 maybe? I mean, that's a lot of money to give to just an all green screen Speed Racer picture.
It is. And I think this is probably obvious to anybody who's either a fan or listening maybe, but it goes without saying, I think, or at least it bears repeating, that the sort of super vivid, like faux backgrounds, and I guess the closest equivalent I could, conjure, maybe John would know better, is like Sin City or like 300 or Shark Boy, Lava Girl, or something like that, where it's not a compromise, right, of the budget. They're not doing it because they're cheaping out. It's in service of the brand. That's my opinion, at least. I have a hard time believing that a movie that looks like that and is so singular in that vision was saying, well, we can't pull this off, so let's not make it look like an actual video game. Because it does. It looks like a real video game with regular people in it.
The one thing I feel with the Wachowskis is they can capture what they're going for. And you're going to see every scent on screen. I mean, Cloud Atlas, Jupiter Ascending, which I love so much. But even though those movies they're bombastic, they're weird, they're different, they're spectacles. But you're right, though. I kind of like that. I mean, every cent was on screen for this. And I think that was
this movie was a pod race. Was like a Phantom Menace pod race. A whole third of the movie.
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
And I also like the way they break up the races, though, because you mentioned a third of the movie. I don't actually know. That might be an interesting data bit. How much screen time is devoted to the races, because it doesn't feel like too much, but it does feel like, it's almost like Mario Kart. And I think we talked about this last time, which was this race is in like an ice location and this race is in like, some tropical exotic area. And I like that about it.
Like Fiji in the beginning.
Yeah.
I love the track. What's kind of weird is I don't know. I just want to bring up one thing about the editing. I forgot to say this earlier. In Fiji, there's a scene where they go from a car to a blimp, to announcers, to a blimp, into a TV, into the home. It's just a beautiful transition.
They do a lot of that, and I love that too.
And it's one of those things. I'm a huge movie nerd, so I'm just like, hey, Megan, come here. Make my poor
Wait,
wife.
Mark, you're telling me you like movies?
Yeah, who would have thought, right? Someone, they told me I have no bits. I love movies. I'm obsessed with them. And when I see cool scenes like this, they make me happy. So I dig it. I don't know. I love the transitions. But I think the racing. I think my favorite race. I mean, what's your favorite racing moment in this movie?
I mean, for me, it's the obvious finale Grand Prix thing. It's basically Rainbow Road come to life.
I love that scene.
But I also like, and I think, John, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I think you kind of hinted at it, where I think Racer X is sort of waxing poetic as Speed is about to cross, and it's like a very emotional build-up. For me, that works. I like that stuff. I'm a sucker for it.
So second viewing again, yeah. I said acclimate, but I never got more used to it as the movie went on. This was a case of the second viewing, I understood what this movie was, and it didn't distract me, I guess. But so once I had that, once I wasn't distracted, yes. That was a scene that before I was very neutral on, and I was interested because I liked both of those actors. And the second viewing, I could enjoy that scene because I do like both those actors. I was no longer, kind of distracted by these transitions between what seemed like a real world moment and this Mario Kart meets the Matrix, Blade Runner, Mad Max Fury Road, Demolition
It's a lot.
Derby.
It's a lot.
Tokyo Drift meets Rollerball.
Whoa, that's perfect.
It's so violent, by the way.
I love
this
that.
is our sixth.
Oh, no, you're right.
Sixth or fifth. This is our sixth or fifth Racing Pod movie.
Fifth.
And this is by far the most tremendously violent of all the racing movies we've seen.
And you say that after we kind of acknowledged last time that the drivers who are, as you mentioned, like completely demolished by these cartoonishly just over the top weapons, but they do eject in these little blob protector pods. What was that like watching that?
Okay,
was that more apparent?
So the first time I seriously thought people were being wholesale murdered. Let's just get that straight. So that is how well I caught that. And by the way, the second time, now that I knew that, I don't feel that the movie did a good job conveying that to me, by the way. So the second time, I'm still watching scenes like, okay, I know that there's one scene where I very distinctly saw like a safety bubble, but I'm like, it looks like these people are getting murdered. And let's just say that I believe that they all have their safety bubble pods.
Right.
When the dude launches, when Speed Racer has his car wheel over Snake Oil's head, if it hit him, he'd die.
Yeah.
Wouldn't he?
The flesh would be off his face.
And someone had a beehive launched into their car, and they were screaming, presumably because they were being stung repeatedly, and this thing was not protecting them. It didn't form and protect them. So I maintain a few of those people still died.
John's calling for
I do not trust the efficacy of these bubble safety pods.
John's calling for a ban on bees for these races.
He's the Niki Lauda of this world, kind of telling everyone that they need to clean it up.
I'm fine with 20%. Once you make it 21%, it's unacceptable.
Now you brought up my favorite moment. There's a catapult that shoots a beehive. And that's That's all I need. I just need a catapult in the movie. It doesn't matter what movie.
Just imagine your pit crew being like, all right, we've got investors, we got blue chip companies supporting this ride and this whip and this driver. We're going to put the highest tech in this bad boy. We got that room for the beehive.
And the axe underneath the car that swings at Racer X's face and he has to duck back.
Sure.
I love the Vikings, guys. Those are my favorite characters in this movie.
It's so fun. And then there was the giant chained morning stars hanging from the back. And then he's swerving around to make it swing. It's almost like a catapult on a rope. So what's funny to me is that this is the third or fourth race of the movie. I'm including the brothers race in the beginning, right? But this is the third or fourth race we've seen in the movie. We know that these cars have a little more trick to them than just being able to make these weird little jumps and flips, right? So we know they have some tricks. But when they introduce this race, they're like, this cross-country race, who can tell what's going on in those dust clouds? People have all sorts of modifications, Frank. And he's like, well, I have a feeling that most of the cars are really following all the rules. And then you go in, and in your head, it's prefaced. You expect this is going to be as zany as it gets. But you go into Looney Tunes bonkers land. Mm-hmm. This is like when Bugs Bunny pulls a mallet from behind his back that weighs 8 times as much as him, as they're catapulting beehives.
Yes.
And again, that Morningstar thing on the chain, those balls were like as big as the car that was towing them. Where were they?
You know, all this talk about this being as over the top. I mean, obviously, like, this is inspired in part, not that the manga had it or the anime had it, but it's so deliberately eschewing, like, the temptation Hollywood does for adapting things with a more mature Western spin, right? Like, we live in a world where we can't even put Hugh Jackman in the Wolverine spandex because, oh my gosh, that would just be absurd. So I just want to appreciate just how all in this movie goes. Because, I mean, think of it now. I mean, let's just thought experiment time. Speed Racer in 2021. What does that look like? Is that more of a Fast and the Furious outfit? Because let's be real, with the way Fast and the Furious movies have been going, it might as well be Speed Racer now. So I'm wondering, you know, maybe the colors aren't there. Maybe it is a more like true to life adaptation. I just think as poor as the timing was for the movie's performance, right, marketing wise, and maybe it was ahead of its time, but you know, had it come out now, I feel like it would have been not only better received, but it certainly wouldn't look or act the same.
Tom Holland would be in it.
Do you think it'd be Speed Racer?
Yeah, I mean, if they had the same budget.
Are we gonna fan cast Speed Racer 2021?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, what do you think, Tom Holland? Think he'd be pretty good?
Well, I do think he'd be good, but let's also acknowledge the what ifs of the previous movie, the one we're talking about, right? Because I mentioned before, Gus Van Sant and Alfonso Cuarón somehow inexplicably were going to direct prior to development. Also, on the casting note, Keanu Reeves turned down Racer X, as did Vince Vaughn, Henry Rollins, Nicolas Cage. Like any one of those guys could still do it. I don't know about Vince Vaughn maybe for this, but Henry Rollins for sure.
Oh, after seeing Brawl in Cell Block 99, that dude can catch a punch and crush his skull like nobody's business.
And he can eat tuna sandwiches for 3 straight minutes.
Is that a Racer X criteria?
Yeah, I would love. Oh man, imagine if. Oh gosh, Speed Racer 2021, Vince Vaughn eating a tuna sandwich for 3 minutes.
And Henry Rollins, he's a perfect Racer X. He was literally in a movie called He Never Died.
Dude's a beast. Nick Cage could be Racer X.
Nick Cage could be whatever he wants.
I want Nick Cage to be the billionaire.
Oh, yeah. That would be cool.
The villain?
But, yeah. So, I agree. Firstly, I agree. But second, I want to also just appreciate Roger Allam, who plays Arnold. I guess his last name is Royalton because they're really on the nose with their villain names. But I just love that if you talk about who the villain is or who the conflict really is in this movie, he's just an avatar for cynicism, not just, you know, from a capitalist, industrialist perspective, but also people who might turn their nose up at this movie. Like, this movie is so hopeful and so joyful. And that's why I think he especially is so pivotal and critical to this movie, is like enjoyment factor for me. Because I also think that any, you know, villain who can spit out the word preposterous in a really cool way, in a really snide way. Right. Like, it's perfect. It's perfect. But I agree. I also agree that Nick Cage would like own that shit.
Do you think that, so the Wachowskis made this and it's all about, I mean, okay, this is a $120 million movie kind of talking about big budget billionaires. But do you think the Wachowskis are kind of saying, like, they wrote the script. Do you think they're kind of saying that they're the Speed Racers a little bit? They're trying to tell original stories, tell weird stories. They're not trying to kind of give up their ideals.
Mega budget.
Yeah.
Of course. Lana, that's how they've always been. But Lana and Lilly are basically, I know how to drive and that's all I'm going to do.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and I love their movies. I mean, just go back and listen to our Jupiter Ascending pod. I think I just talked about how much I loved it for 3 hours. And I just said I love it about 47 times in the first 20 minutes about that podcast. But you're right. I think they just know how to drive. And I don't know. This movie
they really like Mario Kart.
This movie wasn't a total flop. I think 93 million worldwide. And I also think it helped. I think it helped too because, I mean, you look at the people who worked on it. The DP was David Tattersall. And before this, he had done Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones. He had done Revenge of the Sith. But then after it, he started working on like major movies like Journey 2 and other big blockbuster movies that were heavy in green screen. And then the production designer, he moved on to Captain America Civil War, Jumanji 2, Gods of Egypt, Godzilla. So I don't know, like, it's a big budget movie, but it helped filmmaking. I keep
Mark,
going back to that point.
That somebody they shot with different gear this time for using the cameras?
Oh, on this one, yeah, they developed new gear.